Welcome. Join me today as we take a look into the strange tales told around campfires many years ago. Folklore passed down by our forebears. The things that interested or scared them, told from person to person down through the years. Today, we are going to be taking a look at a tale from the Great Lakes State, Michigan. Together, we will explore just what lies beyond the edges of our understanding. Hello, and welcome to Folklore Feature. Today, we're going to be looking at a story from Michigan. It's a interesting story. This is set in my home state, and it is a werewolf story, but I can almost guarantee, unless you've heard this story before, you are not going to guess how this one ends. It is pretty crazy and unexpected. Uh, yeah, you'll just have to listen to the whole thing and see how it ends. But this is a tale from the Detroit area, which at the time was settled mostly by the French. And so a lot of the names are French, and I actually changed a name or two because I cannot pronounce French names worth a darn, and I changed them to be slightly easier to say. But this is a folklore of the French people in early Detroit, and it definitely has a different feeling than the Kentucky folklore I've been reading recently. So I hope you enjoy this one. It's just one story, but it's a little longer. Um, and I think you guys will find it pretty interesting. The Werewolf of Early Detroit. A long time ago, on the shore near a place known as Grosse Pointe, an area about 6 miles north of the village of Detroit, alongside Lake St. Clair, there lived a man who was a trapper. His name was Simon, and his cabin was not far inland from the beautiful lake shore. He had been married, but his wife had died quite young. The man was comforted, however, by the couple's young daughter, Angel. Angel grew up to be an obedient and happy little girl. She was said to be as light-hearted as the crickets that chirped on the hearth. She had a musical voice and a joyful heart, and she performed all of her duties quite well. When she had become a young woman, she was the most popular and lovely at any dance she attended. A young farmer, Pierre, fell in love with Angel and asked for her hand in marriage. Simon consented and blessed their union, and the two happily began to plan their wedding. One night, they canoed lazily along the shore of Lake St. Clair, talking about the wedding and the new cabin that Pierre was building for them about a mile away. Finally, Pierre took Angel back home. As she watched her beloved paddle away for several moments, she was suddenly startled by a rustling sound in the woods. She looked up and screamed. Some kind of monster with a wolf's head, a strange long tail, and a large human body, walking erect, dashed across her path. Angel tore back to her cabin, terrified. When she arrived, she breathlessly told her father what had happened. In fact, Simon had heard her scream and had opened the door before she had returned. Simon did not tell his daughter that he knew what she had seen. It was the dreaded loup-garou. This was the old French name for something people as far back as the Middle Ages had talked about: a werewolf. The creature was half man, half wolf, and they attacked people. But they operated only under the cover of dark and always in the most vile of ways, grabbing people, even young women, when no one was around to protect them. Angel was young, and after her father told her she had experienced nothing more than her imagination in the dark forest, she went to bed, dreaming about Pierre and the wedding. But Simon sat smoking his pipe, worried, late into the night. He had no doubt that it was the loup-garou, the werewolf. He remembered what he knew from his own youth, how this dreaded creature stole young children and young women, or sometimes grabbed young men and dragged them into the forest. These victims were never heard from again, but often this wolf creature would be seen wearing the victim's clothes, as if to try to appear more human, so that he could fool people even more into thinking that he was harmless. The werewolf was especially fond of young maidens, who he loved to snatch away forever. Many people had tried to hunt the werewolf, but he seemed to have special powers. A hunter used a silver bullet one time and managed to sever the werewolf's tail. The hunter kept the tail and stuffed it, and the Indians and the Frenchmen in the area feared and respected its power for years. Simon tried to comfort himself. This werewolf sighting was a chance thing, he told himself, and the creature would not be seen again. But he had a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach. Soon enough, Pierre and Angel's wedding day arrived. It was a beautiful, sunny day. Angel looked beautiful in her delicate white wedding gown. Like all brides at the time, she stepped into the forest near her cabin to gather her wedding bouquet of wild flowers. Suddenly, she saw the beast she had seen before, only this time he was wearing the garb of one of his latest young male victims. Since he was wearing a coat and a hat and twirling a cane, she did not at first recognize him as a beast. The forest was dark and full of shadows. When she did not instantly recoil, the werewolf flashed an evil grin, revealing his wolfish tongue and wolf-sharp teeth. Angel dropped her flowers, turned, and fled. She ran as fast as she could, but the werewolf was faster. He gained on her, coming closer and closer. Just as he was about to grab her, she reached her cabin door, ran in, and slammed it in the creature's face. Her father had already gone to the church, so no one was at the cabin. Angel decided not to tell her father or anyone else, lest it ruin her wedding day. She tried to shake off her terror, and an hour later she stood with Pierre in the little church that was nearby at the time. It was made of logs hewn square and held together with clay. The roof was made of overlapping strips of bark. The couple knelt as the priest performed the ceremony. They then signed their names in the church registry and dashed off to their new home that Pierre had built, where the wedding festivities were to be held. In those days, as now, weddings were very big affairs, but back then, the receptions could go on for several days. Angel forgot the creature, which she still did not know was a werewolf, in the joy of her reception among her guests. Everything seemed to be wonderful, but of course, the evil werewolf had in no way given up on his plan to snatch Angel. And that is just what he did. In the middle of the celebrating, when the last thing people expected was to see an evil, half-man, half-wolf creature, he pounced, as out of nowhere, right into the crowd. He snatched Angel and dashed into the forest so quickly that people had no time to react. Pierre tore off in hot pursuit, and the men followed him. The women and children screamed and cried. Most had only heard stories about the werewolves, but had never seen one or witnessed such a horrible abduction. For hours the men were gone. When they returned, their faces revealed instantly the fruitlessness of their search. But Pierre was not among them. He had kept searching, and his friends finally found him wandering around the swamp, clutching in despair a piece of his bride's wedding gown, which he had found lying on a stump. He just stared and motioned that he just wanted to jump into the swamp, but his friends stopped him. Pierre did not talk to people much after that. He was depressed and quiet. About a year after Angel had been abducted, Pierre's sister married. Something about the wedding preparations brought him to life a little bit. But after the ceremony, to everyone's surprise, he suddenly dashed into the forest as if he were chasing something. He was. He had had a premonition that the loup-garou had a habit of snatching brides, and he had been keenly watching the woods just in case. When he caught sight of the slightest movement in the forest, he knew the werewolf was at hand and tore after him. He did not return, and hours later, friends searching for him suddenly saw him racing through the woods. He looked frantic and strange. His eyes were wide and wild. His clothes were torn to shreds. But just yards in front of him, they saw the loup-garou. Pierre was chasing him, and he was catching up to him. As they ran at top speed, the loup-garou and Pierre were headed straight for the lake, where the shore was high up and full of boulders. Everyone watching assumed that Pierre was done in, that the werewolf would turn and tear him to pieces, and then toss him into the lake. But Pierre's courage and determination had cornered the creature at the lake, and seeing no escape, the loup-garou, facing the lake, suddenly spread his arms out wide, as if to summon something. Indeed, a very large catfish leaped out of the water and opened its wide, unsightly mouth. The loup-garou vanished into the fish, and was never seen again. People were relieved to see the creature gone. But after that, no one would eat catfish, and to this day, people in the area can show you the footprint of the wolf that impressed itself into one of the boulders poised over the beautiful Lake St. Clair. Okay, who saw the catfish coming? Because I certainly did not the first time I read this one. Yes, apparently this werewolf had the ability to summon giant catfish that would speed him away to safety or eat him. I'm not sure what happened there. And also, apparently, this werewolf is able to put on clothes, his little coat and hat and his cane, and I just imagine with a monocle to try to like lure people into the woods. It's definitely not as scary as we've made werewolves, but this is the type of stuff they told each other about those stories. The loup-garou, as I guess the French called it. I've actually heard that term before in a series of books I've read called the Dresden Files. I believe it was the second book? I believe second or third, they had to face down a loup-garou, but nevertheless, very interesting story. I enjoyed it. It definitely shook things up. I'm not done, reading from the Kentucky folklore book or anything, but I just wanted to mix it up, and I found this one interesting. Hope you guys did too. I'll keep putting these out, and thank you for listening if you've made it this far. This is Hopeful American, signing out.